Well, howdy there, guys. This is your host, ID Jester. Thanks for checking out my video. We are in the John Tiller software tutorial video series, and hopefully you've been following along with us and enjoying this series. It's been a pleasure to bring it to all of you. So we've been talking about playing some games and a couple scenarios and getting your feet wet and just looking at the different counters and talking about what we can do to keep our counters in good working order and make sure that we keep them as high a morale as possible. In this case, the highest morale is an A, and keep your fatigue as low as possible and keep your unit counts as high as possible. And why is that important? Well, throughout the manual, there's all kinds of different charts, and they talk about, well, if you do this, and if you have this kind of morale and this kind of quality, quality is interchangeable pretty much with morale in this case. You're going to have a certain amount of penalties or benefits. And so what I did was I created a little cheat sheet, a little sheet that I think might show you exactly what we're talking about. So here's your different quality of your different units. We have vehicle A, non-vehicle B, non-vehicle B, etc., etc. And here is what you get for having better or worse quality units. Again, normal average is C. Anything A or B is going to be better, and D and E and F are going to be less than that. And you'll notice that obviously if we have a non-vehicle A, we're going to get a 10% movement bonus. We're going to get a 20% to our quality fire mod. We're going to get a 20% to our assault mod. For normal, obviously we're going to be zip, 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 zip. If we're a vehicle D, though, all of a sudden we're going to lose 10% movement bonus. We're going to lose 20% to our fire equality mod. We're going to lose 20% to our assault mod. And that's one step lower. If we go even farther down, you can see the penalties getting even worse. We're up to 40% quality fire modifier for fire or assault, whether you're vehicle or non-vehicle. If you go down all the way to F, which is the lowest, you're going to need to get, you're going to have a penalty of 60% to your fire quality mod, your assault mods. You see your movement values aren't even worse. It's minus 30% and minus 20%. So you can see here, if you just look at the normal and then look at above it, you notice that when you get really good units, which are going to be quality A and quality B, you get some bonuses, but they're not as high as the penalties that you suffer when you go really bad or low, in this case D, E, and F. You can see that the bestest we can get is 20, 20, 20. But you notice that if we go worse, we can go 20, 40, 40. We can go 30, 60, 60. So the penalties are much higher than the bonuses you get for your better quality units. So what I'm saying is take care of your better quality units, but try and keep everything as good quality as you can, because if you start lowering the quality by different things, you're going to run into more and more higher and steeper penalties. There are some additional fire modifiers that you can also take into consideration. We already talked about fatigue. If you're at medium fatigue, you're going to be at minus 10%. You throw that on a unit that's, let's say, a non-vehicle E unit, minus 40%. Take another 10% with that. Why not? So you're at minus 50%. So you're at half firepower right there. If you're at high fatigue, minus 20%. You're at maximum fatigue, minus 40%. Again, notice the penalties double every step that you go. So the more worse the worse your units get, the bigger the penalty is, and that is important to understand. You want to keep them as you want to spend a lot of your time making sure that you keep your units at the best quality they can possibly be, because the penalties are very steep when they start dropping, and they start dropping, and they will start dropping fast. You'll be going from a B, and then all of a sudden he'll be a C, and then all of a sudden he'll be a D, and you're like, wait a minute, I went from a plus 10 all the way to minus 20. It's only been like one turn. What's going on here? Disrupted units, they're going to have half firepower. Digging in or low ammo, half firepower. If you're in travel mode, we talked about specifically in this scenario why you don't want to go in travel mode on the beach here, right? Well, one of the reasons is when you're in travel mode, you are at half firepower. And also, targets in travel mode have half their defense. So when you're in travel mode, you're losing half your firepower and you're getting half your defense. Indirect fire on a hex not spotted is 1/4 of your total fire modifier. Targets in travel mode do not benefit from terrain effects either. Direct fire into a higher hex than elevation, then you will apply the elevation mod parameter data to any direct fire into a higher hex. So keep that in mind. Fire at a greater range than 1. You then take into effect your range effect para data value as well. And an indirect op fire mod para data. So indirect op fire. So that means your artillery units that are op firing on automatically are going to be taking a penalty based upon the perimeter data, which is located, of course, in our help and parameter data. All this stuff you can look up in here to find out exactly what penalties you're going to receive for each of those different things. Let's see if I can find one right off the top of my head here. I'm sure it's here probably staring me right in the face, but let's we're gonna look at, no, it's probably up there at the top where all the important ones are. Artillery values. Here's your artillery indirect modifier, 200%. Your Axis indirect modifier is 100%. Your combat losses, we're going to look at that in another episode because this is kind of important stuff that you can delve into and really understand things. I'm just looking through. It's probably in here somewhere. I don't have the time to. Here's. Here's your zone of control multiplier for your movement points. There's all kinds of different things. Anyways, the most important thing is what I'm talking about here, with quality of your different units. This doesn't even take into consideration a lot of the other things that I can fit on my chart here, like the better quality units have better chance of recovering from disruption. If you are low quality units, you have a less chance of recovering from disruption. Digging in, better quality units get a bonus to digging in. Lower quality units have a penalty to digging in. So just about every single aspect of the game, one of the parts to the formula they use is the quality of the unit as a modifier to give you either a bonus or a penalty. So keep your units in the best working order that you possibly can. Again, if they're in white, that means they're at normal. If we look at, say, this unit here, now of course we can only see this unit because it is, we don't have the fog of war on. Otherwise, we would just get question marks down here. Unless, of course, we were playing the German side. But if we were playing the American side, I would highly recommend for the first couple games, as we talked about, running it with fog of war off so you can actually see the other units. You can kind of understand what we're talking about. You can kind of look at them. And as we've already talked about, when you notice this unit here is in yellow, that means it's been modified from its original state. And the reason is when you're disrupted, you automatically lose one morale or one quality state. So this unit is normally a D unit, but because he's disrupted, he's already down to an E unit, which is going to give him even worse penalties. So if he's a non-vehicle unit, and we're looking at his quality fire modifiers minus 20%. But because he's an E unit, he's at minus 40% value. So that's way when he opportunity fired on our units, he's got a minus 40% chance of getting a good result because he's been disrupted. His morale loses a point. So just keep that in mind as well. So you can kind of use some of this information when you don't have the Fog of War on to your advantage and say, these guys are disrupted. There's certain things that we can use. Now's our chance to attack them, put the pressure on them. Hopefully they won't rally and recover from disruption. And one of the other things we went through, and I'm actually going to open a new, I'm going to open my other campaign game so we can talk about this a little bit. One of the things we also talked about, let's go ahead and highlight all the disrupted or broken units. You can see we got one right here. So, man, this guy's disrupted. We want to get him back in the fight because you can see his morale is down from a B to a C. If we look at the other units around him, they're morale B, which are unit A, or quality A's are going to be your elites. B are your superiors, C's are your normals, D are less effective, E, are terrible, and F are horrible. Of course, they use different terminology, but you can understand what I'm getting at. This unit here has got a morale as C because it's been disrupted instead of his unit quality of being a B. So what we want to do is make sure that this guy can rally. One of the things that we can do to make sure our units are rallying is get them as close to the headquarters as possible. So again, what I can do is I can highlight headquarters here, and then I can turn on our command range. Make sure, we're in our command range. The important thing about command range to understand is because of the way the formula calculates out, if your command range is whatever this is in hexes, and your unit's right at the very edge of your command range, it's got a 50% chance of rallying when it's when it happens. So you're going to take the range, and then you're going to divide it by, there's a complex formula or whatever, but basically, if you're right at this, you got a 50% chance. If you're outside his command range, you got a less chance. If you're inside his command range, and obviously the closer you are, because of the formula, the better chance you have of recovering from being disrupted. So obviously keep your units as close to the headquarters as possible. Keep your headquarters, I wouldn't say on the front line, obviously, but I want to keep it up close enough that, I can move my disrupted units back. Of course, units that are disrupted lose a lot of things. They lose morale. You're not going to be able to move them very far, et cetera, because of what happens here. You get a movement point loss. So our non-vehicle B unit normally has a 10% bonus. Well, it loses that when it goes to a C bonus. So it doesn't have as many movement points as the rest of the units in his squad here. Let's see if we can find one that hasn't actually moved. Nope, everyone's moved, so I can't actually compare them, but you can see. Yeah, so you want to also remember the chart we just looked at, fatigue. Right now it is in light fatigue, so we're not getting a penalty. But as soon as this goes to yellow, all of a sudden we're going to be in our medium fatigue, and we're going to start taking a 10% penalty to our fire mod. So keeping your units ultra good. And like I said, there's lots of different examples in the manual. Just bringing up some of them here so you can quantify and see, but there's a lot more than what I'm just showing you here. Anything from building a bridge to the chance of you getting an air mission, having your units rallying, becoming undisrupted, having your headquarters pass their checks, all that's based upon the quality of the unit. The better qualities have a better chance of succeeding. Worse quality units have a worse chance of succeeding. And that goes from everything from direct fire to actually assaulting. Assaulting, I should mention, is slightly different in that you don't actually use your attack value, use your opponent's attack value to defend against you, and then you use your attack value to kind of defend against him. So it's a little bit backwards, but it makes a lot of sense because you normally want to assault units that are disrupted. They're going to be low quality units. They're going to be firing at half firepower. So you want to use their firepower against them to try and defend you as opposed to you using your firepower. So that's just a slight difference between assaulting and just regular fire. So just keep that in mind as well. So we did cover a lot of things, but the basic premise holds true for pretty much everything we talked about, and that is keeping your units in the best quality they can be. And the farther you go down the chain, the worse and worse and the higher the penalties are. And you will see a significant drop in your abilities. So what that means is you want to take time for those units that are high in fatigue value. You know, if you've got units, I'm sure we've got some around here. Let's find a couple if we don't mind here. Yeah, so these guys here have a fatigue of 73. This guy's got a fatigue of 63. They're going to be taking a penalty because they're at medium fatigue now. And so we're going to have to worry about the penalties associated with them. So we might want to take them off the front lines so they can rest and recuperate and earn some of that fatigue back. It might take a couple turns, 3 or 4 turns. So you have to decide, is it worth pushing the unit even farther? Because once they get worse and worse, once they go up to the next level, then you know, they're going to take even a higher penalty to their attacks and a higher penalty to their defense. Is it worth resting that unit and getting them off of the front line for a couple turns? So there's a lot more to it than just pushing counters around. And hopefully I explained some of that to you guys and show you the importance of that. So appreciate everyone that's been following along through this series, the John Taylor Game System software tutorials. You can check out John Taylor Software and check out all of his different games there. And I appreciate everyone. And if you have any thoughts, comments, or suggestions, please leave them in the comment section here on YouTube, and I'll get to replying to you. So we'll see you guys in the next episode. Thanks so much for watching.